everyone, and welcome back to my channel, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Cooking with Candy. Chapow! So if you can't tell by the setup behind me, we're canning today. And right now, a lot of people, they are really looking for ways to preserve food, and they just are kind of lost. And it's like their mamas never taught them how to do this kind of stuff. And I grew up hating canning because it was something we had to do like year around to preserve food for our family, because we lived in kind of a poor area and that's just what you had to do. But in saying that, I am so glad now that I have all of that knowledge of preserving food and saving stuff like that, because it's really helping me out. So I don't can very many things, but tomatoes is something I do can. I am a tomato lover, and so are a lot of people in my family. And if you're in my family, this right here is the closest way to get it to Momo's. So yeah, do it this way for your noodles and tomatoes, guys. So there are a couple of different ways to can, and the way that I'm going to be canning today is in a water bath. I do not have a pressure cooker. If I did, I would be canning a lot more things, but with a pressure cooker, you can can like meat and stuff like that. With a water bath canner, you can can vegetables all day long, but do not can stuff like, I don't know, beef stew and stuff like that in there. No, that will not work. You need to do a pressure cooker with things like that. So if you're new to canning, there's a couple of things that you're going to need to get started on basic canning stuff. This kit right here you can find at most grocery stores. I got mine from Kroger. I think I also got my second one from Walmart. They're all over the place. Just find all the canning stuff and you can find this. And this has all the tools that you'll need to deal with your jars and process them and stuff like that. And the only other thing that I recommend if you have tomatoes or something is something like this, where you can core your tomatoes out. Mine are already done, but I'll give you a demonstration of that. And then of course you're going to need lids and bands as well. And they come in the box like this, like one lid, one band. So you can reuse your bands as many times as you want, just as long as they're not getting like rusty and corroded and stuff. Keep using your bands over and over, and then you can just go and buy a box of the lids instead. And these lids in here, they are brand new. They've never been used. They just fell out of their box, so I keep them all together in here. But once you've used a can, throw away the lid because it's never going to seal right again. And then you do not have to have specific canning salt, but it is something good to have on hand. I have this humongous box, so that's what we're going to use today. So you'll need salt, or if you do not have salt, you can also use lemon juice. I prefer the salt. And also you're going to need to dirty a lot of pans. So I've got my water bath going. I have a pot on the back of my stove going for my lids and my bands that I'll be dropping in there. I have another pot going over here that I'm going to be heating my tomatoes on, and then a pot that you can't see that's heating extra water in case I need that. So we're gonna make a mess today. Speaking of mess, I've made a mess on this part of my counter too. So I have a little bitty garden out back, and I only have like 3 plants that actually made it and produced me tomatoes last year. So when I would have a little bit of surplus of tomatoes, I would cut the tops off of them, core them, and I would not peel them whatsoever. Just cut off any bad spots on them, and then I would put them in a Ziploc bag and freeze them, or even a Kroger bag and freeze them. I also use this method like in case I bought too many tomatoes at the store and I knew that like they were just going to go bad before I actually got through them. I would freeze a couple of them like this, and I wouldn't feel bad for wasting my money on that produce. You can absolutely can fresh tomatoes as well, but I don't have any fresh ones, so I will tell you how to prep those, but I can't really show you. The easiest way to peel your tomatoes, if you have a fresh tomato though, is to get a pot of boiling water, drop you a couple of tomatoes in there. It only takes a couple of minutes, like maybe 2-3 minutes, and then you're gonna start seeing the skins on them split. After they do that, dip them out, put them into a water bath, and then the peels will just slip right off really easily. Pretty simple. On the other hand, if you have frozen them like I have, so when the tomato was a nice, ripe, juicy tomato, I just went in with my core and I cored out the top of that tomato where there wouldn't be any hard piece. And if there was any imperfections or anything on the tomato, I would have cut that out. So after they're frozen and then defrosted, it's really easy to peel them. You just split it down one side and then back off the skin like that right there. It is so easy. They peel super easy on me. And you will notice that there's a whole bunch of juice in both of these bowls. When you freeze your tomatoes, a lot of their juice will come out. So if you're making like tomato juice, I would keep all of this juice. I actually poured some of it out when I first got this out of the refrigerator this morning after they defrosted completely. And I poured a lot of that juice off just because it was excessive. It was too much and I didn't want to put my hands into that really cold water, honestly. And then I also have some tomato juice in this pot as well, already heating up, that I'm going to start adding tomatoes to. And I just wanted to keep some extra juice in case I needed to top off my jars or anything like that. So now I'm going to start heating my tomatoes up. You are not cooking your tomatoes, you are just heating them through. And the reason that you're doing this is because if you put frozen tomatoes or really cold tomatoes into your hot jars and then put them into your hot boiling water, they're gonna bust. And I've had jars bust on me several times in the past, and it's not a fun mess to clean up. So it's just easier just to take your time and heat your tomatoes up and make sure that we're being safe. Now that I've brought my tomatoes just up to a simmer, not actually cooking them, just simmering, making sure they're all good and hot, I'm going to start putting them into my jars. Now your jars, make sure that you have washed them with hot soapy water and gotten them very clean, and also iron them through my dishwasher to get them really hot. And like, they are still pretty hot to the touch right now. So keep them in your dishwasher until you are ready to put your stuff in there, and it'll keep them hot. Just remember, don't touch the rims and don't touch the inside of the jar or you can contaminate something. So that little kit comes with this funnel thing, and it makes it really easy to put your stuff into the jars. You don't have to have this, but it keeps you from making such a mess. So that kit also comes with this little thing, and it has like different measurements right here. And this is to measure your head space because things expand when they get hot. So you need to leave at least a 1/2 inch of head space on your tomatoes. It's either 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. I do it somewhere between these two and make sure it's pretty good. So the way you do that is you just put this down into your jar, and you can see it's not even touching this right here. So I'm just going to take some liquid and fill it up until it is touching right there. So that ensures that I'm going to have a good seal, and it also has a little bit of room to expand. And if you put too much in a jar, just take a spoon and dip it in there and take it out. So the last thing you're going to do is add your salt or your lemon juice on top. Just do a teaspoon of either one in your quarts, and if you're doing only pints, then do 1/2 teaspoon. While the rest of my tomatoes heat up, I'm going to go ahead and put the tops over here. Some people do not heat their rings. I heat my rings and my lids. So the main reason to heat them is this lid has a little rubber gasket right here, and you're just wanting to heat that seal where when you put it onto your jar, it's kind of soft and it will make a good seal for you. The kit I showed you earlier also comes with this cool little magnetic thing, and it helps you pick up your lids and rings out of the hot water without burning yourself. So that's cool. Before I put the lids on my jars, I get a clean paper towel and I go around the rim just to make sure there's not any tomato sauce or anything that's going to get in the way of my seal. And I do a clean spot every single time I do a jar, just to make sure we're getting the cleanest seal we can. And you want to tighten your lids on there. Don't do them super tight, just do them hand tight, just regular like that. Now comes the scariest part, actually putting your jars into the water bath. If your jars are going to bust, this is the time that they're going to do it. If you have brand new jars, you probably don't have to worry about them busting, but if you've used jars over and over for years, then you might have one bust every once in a while. Just make sure you don't see any cracks or anything on your jars. You should be good. You want to put them in your canner where they're not touching each other, spread out like that, and slowly lower them down into your water. So you can see that my water did not cover my jars. You need it at least 1 inch above your jars. So that's why I boil an extra pot of water, because it's a lot easier to add water than it is to take water out. So really quickly, I wanted to tell you that if you only have about this much stuff left in your last jar, you cannot can this one. Just put this one in your refrigerator and use that first. But you know what's even a better thing to do? Make noodles and tomatoes. So this is a dish that I grew up eating through my entire childhood. All this is elbow noodles, tomatoes, and salt and pepper, and a little bit of butter. and it is so good. So you're gonna leave your tomatoes over here on the stove for 45 minutes at a rolling boil until they're all sealed up and ready to go. While we're waiting on those tomatoes, I wanted to take you over to my freezer and show you a few things that you might not have thought of that you can freeze and keep for a really long time. So the first thing I see in my freezer door is shredded cheese. Shredded cheese freezes great. You can freeze it for like a whole year in the refrigerator, and when it comes out, just put it into the refrigerator, and it takes it about a day and a half or so to defrost, and then you got cheese again. I actually have 3 humongous bags of cheese in here, so we have plenty of cheese to get us through this entire year. The next thing is bread. These are hamburger buns, but you can really do it with any kind of bread whatsoever. Just put it in your freezer, freeze it for 6 months, a year, and when you're ready to use it, just take it out, put it in the refrigerator. It'll take about 2 days to defrost. If you put it on your counter, it'll be ready in a couple of hours. Another thing I have in my freezer, this is tomato sauce. And I should have labeled it, but I know it's tomato sauce. But if I don't use an entire can of something, I put what is left of it into a container and freeze it where I'm not wasting. The same thing with this pesto right here. I'm never going to use this entire jar in one setting. I can get like 3 different meals out of this. So I freeze the rest of it, and when I need some, I just scoop some out of it and defrost it. Another thing that you can easily freeze is tortillas. Just put them in there just like your bread, put them in the refrigerator, defrost them. They turn right into the same old tortillas. Then in this drawer, you can see I have a lot of different vegetables. I have corn that is straight from our garden, peppers from our garden, all kinds of stuff. Pecans, you can freeze anything like that. Another thing you can freeze is milk. Just pour like a cup out of it and then seal it back up and put it in your freezer, and then it won't bust on you. And then put it in the refrigerator and then shake it up really good just to get the fats redistributed, and then you have milk again. My family goes through a lot of milk, and I've had to ration them through this because we are only allowed 1 gallon of milk per customer right now in a lot of places. So if you find a place that you're able to stock up on milk, you can freeze a couple of gallons where you'll have it for later. Cornmeal, flour, sugar, anything like that. If you have bug problems or rodent problems, then you can put it in your refrigerator or in your freezer to keep it fresh and safe from them. What I do is I just put it into a Ziploc bag because this is actually open, and I keep this in my refrigerator, and then I also have one in my freezer as well for later on, and it keeps flour for a long time. Did you know you can also freeze butter? You sure can. I've never tried unsalted butter. I don't know if it would change the texture of it or anything, but butter like this, just regular old butter, you can freeze sticks, you can freeze tubs, you can freeze whatever you want to. It'll still work. Freeze them. So if you find a good deal on any vegetables or fruit or anything like that, go ahead and get them and freeze them up in your freezer for later. Fruit is incredibly easy. Just cut it however you want to, lay it out on a tray, put it in your freezer, and then once it's completely froze, take it off the tray and put it into a gallon bag, and then they won't be all frozen together and clumped together. And there you go. You have gourmet fruit ready for your smoothies or whatever you want. Now that the tomatoes have been going for 45 minutes, it's time to take them out of the pot. And I always put down a cloth before I put them down because you don't want to put your really hot jars onto a cold countertop or something like that because they will bust. So lay down a cloth, and then we're going to take the jars out. So if you don't feel comfortable lifting your rack out, you can just use your jar lifter to get them straight from here. And that's what I'm going to do because these jars are heavy and I don't want to really lift out the tray. But you could grab onto the tray and lift it out to make it a little easier. And as I lift my jars up, I give them a tilt just to dump that water off the top of them. And just like that, you're done with your tomatoes. The last thing that you're waiting is for them to seal. You will start hearing that little pop, pop, pop noise. And that means that all of your jars are nice and sealed up and you're ready to put them into your cabinets. And you can keep them for like up to a year. That's the longest that I like to keep my stuff, but some people said that you can go longer. So I hope that you enjoyed this canning video, and I hope that you got something from those freezer tips as well. And until the next time, I will see y'all again on Cooking with Candy. Shapow! Say bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.